Okay, I think we're all set. All right. Well, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to my chat, kind of like who you are, what you've done,
Sure.
just very briefly before we get into it?
Yeah. I'm Packing10. I've been coaching Overwatch since 2016, I think is when it was. Like maybe 2007, beginning 2017. I don't remember exactly when it was. Um, kind of ran through the circuit, coached contender. Well, coached like no-name teams back when it was Go To Gamers, and then went through contenders, qualified for contenders season 0, the land final with Envision. Then the next year, I kind of retired after that, and then I went to coach Angry Titans in Europe, and we went to the land finals in Paris for that, and then got an offer from LA Valiant that same year. In 3 months, I got promoted to interim head coach because they fired Moon, and then I was head coaching there for whatever it was, like the last 2.5 years, and then when they kind of decided to go with the Chinese roster or whatever, like get rid of the team, now I'm just coaching Valorant. So
Okay. Okay. I mean, obviously that's the big, that's the elephant in the room for sure. Obviously, like you were somebody who was really, really well respected across the Overwatch coaching the scene, and then all of a sudden that whole situation happened. And obviously,
yeah,
we don't have to talk as much about that because I'm sure that's something that people have been harassing you about over and over and over again. You can if you want to, but obviously there's a lot more to your career, even just in the last couple of years, that I'm sure other people would love to know about. And I guess we can kind of start there. So like,
sure.
you've like, do you mind asking like how old you are?
Yeah, I'll be 29 here in about 2 months on the dot.
Right. So
So
you're an old man in esports age.
very old. Yeah, very.
I'm 26, so I know how it feels like to be old. But you're even
Yeah,
you're like
I'm
ancient,
ancient.
right? And but I
Yeah.
guess in a way that has, would you say that has like any impact on what you're able to do as a coach? Not just the age itself, but the life experiences that you had. Like what led you to
Yeah,
coaching?
yeah. I think that's a really good question. And for myself, like I actually take a lot of like my personal like core values from life into coaching, and a lot of it was shaped from traditional sports, which I played all the way growing up. I was a big baseball player. I wrestled, I played football, I golfed. I actually golfed in college after I got out of the Marine
Oh,
Corps.
nice.
I did a bunch of things, and like my time in the Marine Corps really shaped a lot of leadership experience and a lot of like those personal values that I took over, and then learning a lot from both traditional coaching and then reading a lot of books on different coaching philosophies from all these different kinds of leaders and military leaders. One of the big things in the Marine Corps was we had the Marine Corps Commandant's reading list, and we had to read a couple books every year about famous leaders in the Marine Corps and how they led and why they did what they did and things like that. And I guess going into an environment where everybody I coach is probably almost 10 years younger than me now. It's something that I think people end up finding out really quickly, that it's very beneficial to have someone who has those qualities and that leadership experience and can just make sure everybody's staying on track. And
Sure.
um, you know myself and working with Gumba now for a couple of years, we kind of give people a lot of tough love, but I think people really appreciate it throughout the history of the career, and they may not appreciate it at first, but the longer they work with us, they're like, oh shit, like these guys are only doing it because it's really beneficial for us long term. They're just trying to make sure we're disciplined and make sure we're doing the right thing. So I do think the life experience and everything is really important. Not saying that I don't think someone could be 16, 17, 18 and be a coach, but obviously having that kind of background to fall on and to learn from, if you use it the right way, yeah, it's going to be effective. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. And you talked about a lot about your military experience, and that's something that even when I've been researching leadership and coaching, and consistently, it's either military leaders or people with military experience that continues to come up. Why do you think that is? Like, what is there anything specific that you can pull up? Because we talk a lot about like leadership experience, but like, is there any examples or just concepts that you pulled straight from the military that you learned from the military?
I mean, it's more so a way of life. It's the being in the Marine Corps, you have to be the most disciplined human on earth. When you go into a combat environment, 2011, 2012, I was in Afghanistan, and it's not, you're not playing games. You need to listen to your superiors and direct your subordinates in the way that you want them the way that they need to stay alive, right?
Right.
So being able to, understand what that next level of discipline is and how that, like, how beneficial that is, like that's probably like the biggest thing. But it's kind of hard to, I guess, like, quantify all the experience and, all of the people that impacted me and things I took from certain leaders and didn't take from other ones throughout my time there, because I was always filling billets in the Marine Corps that were, higher than what I was supposed to do, because people saw those leadership qualities in me and wanted to see and wanted to learn if I was going to be, a 20-year career Marine that was going to be able to be, a top leader, high ranking Marine,
Right.
throughout his whole career. So people saw that in me early on, and I didn't really think anything of it, I guess. And then, when it was getting towards the latter part of my term of enlistment, and I decided I wasn't going to stay in, I kind of really started to see that and say, oh wow, these people really thought like this highly of me. And now that I'm actually getting out, like, people were genuinely upset that I was getting out of the Marine Corps to pursue college and other things.
And that's a
Just
sincere
because they saw
compliment.
that skill. Yeah, it was. I mean, and I didn't realize it when I was a kid. I joined when I was 17. I was in from 18 to
Wow.
22. So I didn't really see it at the time, but towards that later portion when I decided I was getting out, like, I kind of realized I had some of those skills, and I was really good at enabling people to be better and pushing people to be better. So
Right.
yeah.
And that's kind of like one of the things where you're like, you don't really know you have a skill until you're like, oh, I guess I have this skill now. I guess I'm good at this now. Maybe it's not something that you consciously were practicing when you're in the military, but you walk
Dude,
away
when I
from
was in
that.
the Marine Corps, I was like, hey, we get done with work, I'm gonna go freaking pound some tequila shots and, party with my buddies, play some beer pong, and call it a day. Go down to Myrtle
That's
Beach.
leadership
Like,
training. I've got a bunch of people in my
that
chat. They're like, okay, well, sweet. So that's exactly how to be a
yeah,
great
man, like,
leader.
that's what it was though. But the fact, like, I guess the thing was, as it progressed and as I ended up, getting higher, a little bit higher in rank, and responsibilities progressed, like, the leadership became like it just naturally, became something like,
Right.
we ended up having, like, one of my jobs was like picking up like the new Marines for our unit from the airport and like getting them checked in and making sure they're taken care of, and just like, you're their first impression of what it's like to be at that unit and what's expected. And you're driving them back, and you're like, hey, listen, like, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. And I was really realistic with the people. I'm like, dude, I get it, you're like 18, you just got out of boot camp, like, you're gonna want to go party and stuff and do all these things. Like, I was the same way. But you have, like, if you're gonna do it, like, don't be an idiot. Like, you kind of, it's one of those situations, like, you kind of have to lead from the front, and like,
Yep.
you know what people are going to do regardless of if you want them to do it or not. So sometimes it's about, like I said, just, lead from the front, be objective about it, talk to them about the problems, in all honesty, and fix the problems before they even start.
Right.
So
Right.
being, that was kind of one of the things that with all the stuff I did in the Marine Corps, I did some cool shit, I did some crazy shit. But it's funny that, like, being the person who picked people up from the airport and like got them like checked in and schooled up on like what it was like to work for that unit, like, that's one of the things I was most proud of, because that meant that people actually thought I was, that good of a person
Yeah.
and that good of an example.
Yeah.
And I probably wasn't, to be honest, but
Better than you think, though. Like that first
yeah,
impression, man. That's so. It's some. Like that's it. Like that's where their journey begins, right then and there. And obviously, they're gonna give somebody who's gonna be responsible that first impression. And maybe it's not like you're gonna sit down and have a heart to heart talk with them. But I think that's kind of a good metaphor for like the coaching career in general. Like a lot of times you as a coach and as a leader, sometimes you're just doing the everyday things, but you just do them really well. Or you set a good example of even just the little things.
yeah,
That's crazy. So like, I guess you pull all of that stuff away from it, all the little things, maybe that you don't even realize that you're improving yourself as a leader. And then first off, like what got you into Overwatch? And then at what point did you realize that, hey, I should coach this, or hey, I'm pretty good at coaching this? Like, what was that transition like for you?
yeah. So I didn't play video games. I didn't even know what esports was until maybe like 2014, 2015. And I was like just getting out, just about to get out of the Marine Corps, and my buddy got me onto League of Legends, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, a fun game to play. And um, when I got out of the Marine Corps in March of 2014, I ended up like not realizing like how far in the bucket I was with like I was like I was drinking and partying every day when I was in the Marines. I thought that was normal, and then I realized when I got out that like there was actually about a bunch of like underlying stuff that was going on, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna cut out drinking. Like I don't want to do that, and I stopped drinking, and then I realized I was getting like really bad night terrors, and I was just it was a really tough life. I was never able to sleep. And I didn't really want to talk to anybody because I thought I was like too tough and all this stuff. And um, ended up like I was suffering from like really bad PTSD. And that's the only reason, in all reality, that's the only reason why I ever found Overwatch, because at that time, I, I guess it was like I said, 2014, I started going to Penn State. I was like really struggling with doing anything. I was like failing classes, this, that, everything else. And um, you know, I ended up getting into the alpha for Overwatch, and I was like, man, this game's fucking sick. Like, this is a lot of fun. And I was playing on my laptop from when I went to the main campus. I think it was like probably early 2016 or whenever. I don't remember when the game came out or anything like that, the exact timeline. But when it was in alpha, I was at the Penn State main campus, and I was like playing from like a laptop with that like literally burnt a hole in my dresser because I was just like on the laptop 24/7 playing. I started like at that time like skipping classes, and like I couldn't sleep at night, and it was just a miserable time. But the only thing I had was Overwatch. So I was playing it, and I was like, oh well, maybe I could like be really good at the game, and then see like alpha beta I was really good. Played for a lot of teams, and then season 1 came out, and I was like, I don't remember, like high 60s, low 70s in rank. I'm like, oh, I'm not bad. And then I just like started playing as people, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna be a pro. And I was like, well, what can I do? Because this to me is the only thing I find enjoyable in life right now. So I decided to start reaching out to teams to see if I could coach any teams. And I ended up finding this team that was called Winston Ult IRL. And it was like a bunch of players that played for Envision later. And then Arrow was one of my players. Tickety was one of my players.
That's funny.
Coffee from Envision was one of my players. And I ended up just spending all my time just trying to learn and understand the game. And I mean, I said it in a bunch of other interviews and stuff like that, but it's kind of crazy that with the way that my life was and what was going on, I mean, I was like really fucked up in the head, and I mean, Overwatch was, I mean, it was great. Like, I mean, it literally saved me. So, I have a lot of love for the game, regardless of if I'm working in it or if I'm not or anything like that. It's just one of those things. Again, it's I mean, not like a quantifiable thing. It's kind of crazy. So
right. Well, I mean, regardless, like giving you that structure, something to work at. And then I guess you talked briefly about your path as a coach through different teams. Are there any like highlights or interesting things that you learned along the way on your path to the LA Valiant? Because a lot of teams knew you from Angry Titans. Anyone that followed the EU scene, that was back when, or I guess in their heyday, when they were considered a top contender. But then kind of like what did you learn, I guess, along that path before the Valiant?
Yeah, I mean, it was I would say that I mean there's tons and tons of things. I mean,
Right.
No, number one was like connections go farther than actual skill. To be honest, I've met so many people, coaches, players, anything like that, that they won't get opportunities they should, even if they're really good, just because they don't have the right connections. And that was something that was kind of sad to learn, because I was one of the people that was like, I'm a grassroots guy. I'm gonna grind it up. I'm not gonna try to make these connections and like weasel my way in to get an Overwatch League job or this or that. I want it to be on merit. And it took a long time. In my mind, it took me a long time to get that opportunity. But then once I was able to get that opportunity, I was able to thrive in it. I guess the other things were, just I was really fortunate to be able to work with so many different, being able to work in NA and EU, I guess, and like different culturally different players, because it gives you a different perspective as to like what qualities you should really be looking for in players and what qualities have like a continued line of success amongst all the players you've coached, or what you're looking for when you're recruiting players. Different attitudes, different perceptions, different skills from the different regions. There were so many things that were kind of taken for granted at the time, that I didn't really think when I was coaching with Angry Titans. I was kind of doing it just to make a couple extra bucks, because I was just like, yeah, why not? Like, it'd be kind of nice to coach again, and I can make a little bit of money. And then I started to see all these kind of like the work ethic, and like, when we were structuring practice, it was a lot more effective over there. And like, why was that? And where were my deficits before? And how do I do that? How do I improve on that? And how do I reach these players who are different? I mean, the list goes on and on. It just, it's tough to single out one or two things, but if I had to, I guess it would be those kind of things. So
sure. So like, I think that's one thing that I feel like I learned a lot with going from region to region is you don't tunnel vision. You have to deal with so many different teams, so many different dynamics, so many different experiences that you learn a lot from, and then ultimately you're making the connections along the way, which helps a lot. You join LA Valiant. I wouldn't say certainly not out of nowhere, but a lot of people were not familiar with you late 2019 after, Moon's struggles early on in the season. And for like relatively, I think people were like, hey, this guy did some good work. And then obviously you continued to work on that work in 2020. And ultimately, people were very impressed. And like, I think you build a lot of fans, not only of you, but also the organization, and then the players within that organization, which is obviously why this whole fallout over the transfer of power, I guess, is why it was so harsh, is because people had kind of come to really respect and appreciate you. So I guess walk me through, and again, this is a massive question, but what do you think that, like, starting off with Valiant, you walk in, Moon's gone, you're walking into a train wreck, that takes some serious balls. What was your entry day? Like, what were you mentally, like, what were you looking to change, I guess?
Well, I mean, the thing was, I was already working there for a couple months as an assistant. So they brought me in the end of 2018, like November, I think it was, or something like that. They brought me in, and I was supposed to be,
in November?
I was supposed to be, November of 2018, I think it was.
So
I was like, it was like a trial contract initially,
and
then this. So I was actually, they brought me in, and they were like, hey, like you understand goats really well, like, could you like help the team, this and everything else? But yeah, sure. Yeah. So we did that, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall, about a month in, that it was, it was really. I don't know. Like, you could just see like a lot of the patterns, a lot of the other things that were just going on, that like there were just gonna be struggles, and we tried to fix them, and I tried to be an active part of that. And it didn't really work out that well. And then once these kind of decisions with like the Kooky thing and everything started, Kooky Custa thing started coming in, it was like, it's gonna be tough. And day one, so I was actually on a flight. I was because at the time I was getting my pilot's licenses and stuff. I was flying to North Atlanta on a night flight, and Mike called me and said, hey, listen, just letting you know, we're gonna be firing Moon. Are you interested in picking up the job as the interim head coach? You'd have to come out to LA for a little bit, but then we'd send you back there, and we're basically just gonna look for a new guy. And I said, hey, let me think about it for a couple minutes. And then I talked to him, and I just said, listen, I want to do it, but you give me like 2 weeks, okay? Like, let me go out there. Let me talk to the guys. Let me do everything. Let me get a structure in place. Give me 2 weeks before you start looking for someone, because I could prove to you that I could do a better job being a remote head coach than anybody you can hire can being in person. And he said, okay, like, we could do that. So I went out to LA, and actually, I think I might have been. The first time, once this was all announced and stuff, I don't think I was in LA. I think I was still in Georgia at the time. I was getting ready to fly out, and they called me and they said, hey, listen, there was like the owner was like talking to the team and HR and all these people, and then I was like my turn to talk to the team and like address the team, and I just said, listen, guys, like we fucking suck, and like if you trust me and you believe in like what I'm going to tell you and you take it to heart, then we'll find a way to turn this around. But it's going to require a lot of things, and that's everybody showing up every day and giving 100%. And if you're not, it's not tolerated, and you're going to be gone. If you if you're disciplined, if you respect what we're saying, if you're giving that effort, if you're all actively trying to be a part of that environment, and some days are gonna be tougher than others. We got a long way to go, but if you do that stuff, then we'll be fine, and we'll have a shot at making playoffs. And sure enough, it was a big veteran team, and there was still, when you fire the Korean head coach, who all the Korean players loved, and then you bring in a Western coach who's pretty, unknown, and it becomes a very different environment. And Moon's environment is very holistic. It's very like players are all going to have the answers, and just very, very holistic system. And my system was very, very structured. It was, listen, every day we're going to come in. Myself and the coaching staff we're there early, and we're going to be there, and there's going to be the objectives for the day on the board, what everybody's expected to work on. Everybody's expected to take notes as the practice is going on, and have stuff for review. We had like, it seemed like bad stage anxiety at the time, so we had like really like localized type of practices that were made to simulate match environments and things like that, to try to get the players there with actual stakes on them, like extra reviews or homework for the night or things like that. Right. And then if we won, they'd get like a free, like the MVP would get like a free dinner or this or that or whatever. And we tried to make it an environment that there were so many different stylistic differences that we could always kind of try to ramp up the process of growth and development. And it was kind of like with traditional weightlifting, right? If you're always doing one set of bicep curls, it's great. You may get stronger, but you may not see the size growth you want, because you're not shocking those muscles and being able to to really change that workout routine. We were just kind of on a super high paced, high intensity always bringing different things at you type of structure. And every day we were trying to make it something different. We were trying to have different goals. Throughout the day we would have 2 or 3 scrims a day, and it would be like, hey guys, here's the initial goal of the day. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to improve on. Let's watch a VOD of how we were doing it yesterday and why we're so dog shit at it. And we'd watch it and we'd go, okay, here's what everybody needs to do. And then we'd go into the first scrim. We do that, and then we'd focus on those 1, 2, 3 different things, and then we'd go into the the break for lunch, and everybody grab their lunch, come right back in. We do a review on that same thing and be like, okay, cool, player-led review. Who's doing it? Let's talk about what we were doing right, what we were doing wrong, how we can make this better. And then we'd scrim again and be like, okay, cool, we improved it a little bit, but now let's make these other changes. And then if we were happy with where that objective was for the day, then we could go on to something else, or maybe we wouldn't do a review at the end of the day, or whatever the case may be. But it was just a lot of work, a lot of effort from everybody, and it worked. I would like to say that, it worked out to an extent. Obviously we were in the hole pretty bad, and we missed the playoffs by like half a game. Yeah. So we had like a hell of a year. I think it was like 11-4, 11-5 going, through the latter portion of the year. But it was or something like that. I don't even remember, to be honest, so long ago. But but it was a really good ending to the year. We had a really good run. We ended up throwing the game against Glads, and if we won that, we would have made playoffs. So that's tough. It ended up being, but at that point, it's like you got that far to be able to compete. You basically were in play. Like, we were basically in our minds in playoffs for 2 stages that we needed to win almost every single game. Right. And I was so proud of those players, and probably one of the most proud moments I've ever had with a roster, just because of the level of like trust that they had, and the level of growth all those players had. Even when we brought in Fact, and like he provided such like an instrumental role, and then we brought in Shax, and we're like, hey, listen, we want this guy to develop and everything. And then he came in the next year and did even better. Mm-hmm. It was it was a really good year for the Valiant, and unfortunately, long term, it didn't really work out. Right, but right. That's what it is. So how do you, like, you talked a lot about like how the team had a lot of trust, and I think that's a consistent key to success for really any team looking to find success, whether contenders, tier 3, Overwatch League, whatever. Yeah. is building that trust, having that player leadership. I noticed that you said that you had player-led reviews at some points. How do you kind of cultivate that every day? Well, Tom, do you want to talk more about the player-led reviews? Because I'm that's something that I'm a big fan of, but I'm curious to hear what are your takes on that specifically. Yeah, so Yeah, so obviously with that team, we had three really like outspoken people in I guess I wouldn't be like super outspoken, but like Custa was like a very outspoken person that would never have a problem like talking about reviews. Fact, same thing. Like he was
Mm.
always willing to give his opinion. He'd always give his opinion and feedback. And then Indy was just a leader on the team because he was he was so good, and he wasn't the most outspoken person in the world. But once we started really getting into that environment of we kind of had three leaders on the team with those three players, and we were just cycling every day. Whenever it was a different turn for a player review, one day Custa would lead it, and they would be expected just to do my job or Stoop's job at the time, and go, okay, cool, let's talk about this. This is kind of what I'm seeing. Like, Brady, what do you think? Or this guy, Kriv, what do you think? Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's funny because a lot of the time it seems a little bit counterintuitive, or like it seems like awkward at first, but it's one of those things that if you get over that initial hump of like 1 or 2 days, maybe a week of like people feeling awkward about it, you end up getting those people who they were shy at first. I mean, Shax was a great one. That he was very, very reserved. He wouldn't really give a lot of opinion and review. And then we did that over a long period of time throughout the whole time he was there. And every day it's like getting challenged to say one more thing at review or this or that or whatever. And um last year with Valiant, we didn't have a team that was like super talkative during reviews, and Shax would a lot of the time, like, he'd be one of the people giving the most critical feedback of what's going on in the review. And the change from 1 year prior to that last year, night and day. So just making those players get out of their comfort zone and do it. And like, obviously nobody's going to want to do it, and players don't like public speaking, especially in a person, because it's like you have 10 players in there or whatever, and then 3 coaches or 4 coaches,
Right.
and maybe the GM's in there or this or that, or maybe like somebody like the owner or whoever CEO comes in, and it's like you feel really awkward. And public speaking is it's a skill. I mean, it takes a lot of time to be comfortable speaking in front of crowds, regardless of if it's 2 people or 10 or 100. But being able to get them out of their comfort zone with that, they don't realize the effect that it has not only on themselves as a player and being able to present new ideas and pull new ideas out of each other, but it also has a positive impact on how they perform on stage, because it's competing in front of people is the same thing as public speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
You're in a different kind of pressure, but it's the same kind of environment where to see growth, to see success in those events, you can't be a good public speaker and be nervous in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Everybody's going
Sure.
to know. They're going to see you fidgeting. They're going to hear the way you talk and your dialect and your how you pause and the amount of time you say and like in sentences, things like that.
Yes.
It's the same way as playing the game.
And if nothing else, they get the opportunity to like practice something that they don't really want to do or perform under pressure. So even if the performance is slightly different, they're still, hey, I know what this feels like performing under pressure. I've already beaten, public speaking. I can beat this too.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, one of our goals, one of my goals personally as a coach from day one, I always said it's about the person becoming a better person first, and then becoming a better player after that, and being able to have these skills that quantify over a real life, and they could take with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, at the end of the day, a lot of these players coming in, especially in Overwatch League, 18-year-old kid just gets signed, and you have a whole team of 18 to 22, 23-year-old kids that have been playing video games their entire life, and that's all they know. And then they get out, and maybe they can't make a career as a streamer, they can't make a career as a professional gamer, and they need to have those qualities, they need to have those life skills to be able to succeed. And public speaking is a skill that'll take you a long, long way. So
Right.
things like that, nobody really sees that in the moment, but and obviously people probably hated me at the time for making them talk in front of each other. But the overarching thing is, we always tell the players, no matter what we do, there's a purpose to it, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not, or this or that or whatever, but just trust us, there's a purpose to it. You may not see it now, you may think about it 10 years down the road, but everything we're doing, everything that I do as a person with my teams, is to make them better in life, to make them a
Sure.
better person. So
Sure. So like long term focused as well. Like as you're improving your execution and your confidence in your players, they're also building skills for the future.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
do you think trust was also built through those player-led reviews and kind of players taking responsibility?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because the more information these players get, and the more they could get out of someone, it just it's a night and day difference in the quality of what happens. One player, if Agilities was always a really quiet player on our team, and if Brady ended up coming up with something, or Shax, or any of the guys who were really quiet in season 2, ended up coming up with something that was really good, or we could try out, or this or that, or whatever the case may be, and then it worked. It was just like, man, like this is like, Brady, you need to talk more, man. And then like it builds
Yeah,
his confidence up, and it builds
right,
the team's confidence up, and it just it keeps it's an exponential growth curve
right,
when stuff like that happens, and it's always good to see that. Not saying there weren't problems, and every time we coach any team, it's sunshine and rainbows, but stuff like that is always it's always nice to see. So
makes sense, makes sense. Well,
yeah.
that's great, and I like the trust, the leadership. So one of like this is a really selfish question because this is something an opinion that I have or a theory I've been working on is that I think one of the most, if not the most important thing in successful teams, I guess if we could boil it down, is player leadership. Um, Not just outside of scrims, but also inside of scrims and officials, like players stepping up, calling, taking leadership, either through like emotional or encouragement, similarly to like a mini coach, but also just like coming down to like, hey guys, what are we doing? Like, what's the game plan? Like, what is the strategy here? And I noticed even sometimes teams that have smart coaches don't play very well because the players might know a lot, but they're not really used to like stepping up and actually applying and executing that. And
Sure.
sometimes you'll see teams that aren't particularly, they don't even have a coach, but they just troll and they just like all in and they just like step up and they just like goof around, but they're all on the same page, right? What are your kind of experiences with, I guess, leadership in game, out of game with players? Is that something that you look to foster, or is that like, I guess, just like how does that result, and what are your thoughts on that whole concept?
Yeah, I think for us, a big thing we always talk about is just that the talent of the players is going to come before any other quality. At least now, whether teams are too good, players are too good. Leadership is something you could. I don't want to say you can teach. You can find people if you. Odds are, if you find a team of 5, 6 people,
Yeah.
you'll find someone who has the innate ability to be a leader, even if they don't want to, and you're able to
Mm.
pull those things out. Prime example is with our Valorant team. We ended up, we're signing all our players. We're like, listen, we are just looking for the most talented roster we could get because that's what we want. Baseline is talent, and then we'll try to build those other skills along the way.
Right.
Um, you can look at the different growth curves of the different players. JC Stanny has been with the team for almost a year now.
Mm-hmm.
He was benched at one point. He, this, that, everything else. It was some tough months, some good months. Everything, was really oscillating between high and low, high and low. And over that time period of the last year, especially in this last couple months, we saw a lot of growth in terms of those leadership qualities, and we were always pushing him. We were always really tough on him because we saw those skills. We know that he could be that, and we initially brought him in, never had any shot calling experience, and we're just like, hey, you're gonna be the shot caller. That's it, dude. You don't. That's it. Cool, you're a shot caller. Like you that's your job. Like whatever. And even though it wasn't something he wanted to do, it was something that he had embraced and you get comfortable with. And as time went on, he got better at it, and then we ended up getting someone else to do it. But it made him grow really well, and then he didn't have to do it, and then he was able to grow and develop in different ways. And now, like I said, I mean, he's instrumental in how our team works, and an outstanding force for good on our team. And then another example is a player like Nature, who we just signed. We signed him in January, and a couple days after he got here, the initial conversation, we were going to have him play one role and Shot Up play a different role, and he came in and said, hey, listen, I should play the other role because he's a better player than me, and I don't want to be selfish. Like, if we want to win, this is what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that kind of quality, and you have the kind of conversation that was led by him, and that was something that was like a decision that we were already going to make, and we didn't tell anybody. And he came to us and was like, hey, listen, like, this is what we need to do. And we're like, oh, cool, you have these qualities too. Like, let's start fostering that and building that, and turn you into a leader. And now, I mean, he's a great leader for our team. 2 months in, he does a great job at shot calling. He puts in so much effort. he's always messaging, myself or Gumba or whoever to, do more. He wants to do more. He wants to learn more. He wants to be better. He wants the team to be better. And so, in one sense, finding talent is like the most important thing, and then you can foster those aspirations, or turn someone into a leader if you want to, or if they have those abilities.
Right.
But I guess to bring it back to the Overwatch team season 2, we already had players, like I said, like, Fact was a really good leader. Costa was a really good leader. We used to have, every time I went out to LA, because I try to go out like once a month or something like that for a week or two.
Yep.
We would have the first night I was out there, we'd have like our quote unquote like leadership dinner, and it would be like, myself and then Stoop and then the two, Fact and Custa. And we just sit down and we talk about what all the problems were, what we expected from them, and they always knew what we needed to do. And there were times during matches that things weren't going right or whatever the case may be. And then we have to like talk to like Custa on the side or somebody and be like, hey, listen, really need you to watch for this because X player is nervous or this or that or whatever, and like just try to build them up
Right.
and then they could carry that out, and that's something that is not too bad, not too hard to do. But that in that same respect requires a lot of trust from those players who were kind of like in that like leadership council type of the team, and if you have really good leaders like they were, it makes it really easy because things kind of police themselves a little bit, and it just continues that very structured style of leadership all the way down, throughout the team, because now it's not like, hey, there's two coaches that are on like the same level, and then like all 6 players, none of them's really a leader, and then like nobody's holding each other accountable as the players. Being able to have players that hold each other accountable, and especially when you have that kind of leadership-esque or leadership figure in the player side of the team, it really helps. And then I'll tell you a nice little fun fact to add on to that is, when you have leaders in the team like that always, they're always working with the coaches and this, that, everything else, and then you need to kind of make a statement for the team, or find a way to really get them to drive themselves to be better. You have one of those tough conversations in front of the team, that you're a little bit angry about, or maybe it's artificial anger or whatever the case may be, and you kind of yell at that leader of the team a little bit, and then people are like, oh shit, like this guy, like, wow, like, he's getting yelled at for this, like, all right, well, we got to try harder. And then you find
Tom
creative
Brady.
ways.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You find creative ways to utilize every aspect of growth you can. And I've learned that over the past couple years, and I'm still learning things that I could do, or whatever the case is. I tell my players, yeah, it's funny. At the end of the year, we sit down and we talk. Sometimes it's halfway through the year, and I could get angry, and I could get really angry, and people don't like when I'm really angry. But a lot of the time, I'm not angry at all. It's just something that you have to turn on, and you have to be angry, and you walk out of the room, and I'll talk to one of the coaches, and just kind of have a little chuckle and be like, "Man, I was like really angry, right? That was really convincing." And they're like, "Yeah, like, that was good, man. Like, that was good." But it's one of those things. Like I said, you have to have to be a complete coach. You need to be able to have every skill set, from being able to be compassionate and be understanding with the players, and talk to them on an individual level, to being able to be able to yell and scream and really push different players in different ways, because every player is not created equally. They're all different. They've all come from different backgrounds and different atmospheres and environments, and if you find ways to push everybody differently, you find ways to reach people differently, then you'll find ways to be successful.
Something I've heard is that you hold everybody to the same standard, but you treat them differently, or you get them there differently.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I guess there are a few cases where you actually can't hold everybody to the same standard because of personal reasons or mental health or this or that or whatever. Especially with us, because we're very intense in what we do. But in those circumstances, it's really good, really important to have people. For myself, it was really good to have a person like Unter around last year, because with how difficult everything was in terms of everybody's mental and the environment and things like that, just with COVID, being able to have someone who's very lighthearted and like made the days fun to be there, it really taught me a lot last year, and I learned a lot last year from being able to be like, hey, listen, maybe less is more. Like, let's practice less. Let's try to make things bearable. Like, nobody wants to be here because we're stuck inside for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We come in and we get yelled at and this and that. Let's try to make it fun. Let's try to do fun things. Let's play different comps. Let's do this. Let's do that. And, a lot of the times, like, there'd still be stress and people would still be mad. And, we'd kind of get into it or this or that or whatever. But it was definitely a lot more bearable, and being able to kind of see that and understand. I was still growing and learning last year, and it's really important to be self-critical about those things, and be thankful when you end up finding people that make you better, like Hunter did with me last year.
Sure. And that interests me, kind of what you're talking about there as well. Like, sometimes less is more, being efficient, because you were very famous for saying that with hero bans while they were there, you felt your team focused on the right stuff, so you guys were never as affected. You guys were more efficient with your work. A lot of coaches were like bemoaning, oh, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and we can never figure it out. And you were like, come on, guys, like, we don't have, it takes us like nothing. We don't even care if we get the perfect comp. We're just better at, like, at all the fundamentals and stuff. So, like, what was how did you guys handle that? Like, was it very much a strong fundamental understanding of Overwatch, a good, like, planning stage?
That was the goal. The goal was we broke. I don't think I ever talked about this before, but we broke everything down into, like, archetypes. So, we had we figured if we could teach the game in a level of, it's just archetypes at the beginning of the year, and it's like, if we're playing a spam comp, all spam comps function 80% the same way. All dive comps function. The fundamentals of the dive comp will all be the same. The fundamentals of a hybrid comp, Widow Tracer, Ash Tracer, something like that, they will always be the same. Fundamentals of a brawl comp always will be the same. So if we could break things down in the game and just remove the names of the heroes and say, all right, cool, we're running X comp, and this plays like a spam comp. Everybody should know what their role is in that comp. Everybody should understand how that should function, and everybody should just be able to provide their role. And then you requires a lot less feedback, and just more direct feedback in terms of how individual people are doing things or what they need to change or whatever the case may be. But that was something we focused on, like, a lot early in the year when we were in the off season. They announced the hero bans and what it was going to be. I think it might have been Reprise or Stoop. One of them was the ones who, like, we were, like, kind of all floating ideas as to, like, what we should do to optimize practice. And my coaching staffs they're always people that we could just sit there for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. If it's an off day, we're usually just sitting on the computer for 12 to 14 hours, just talking about what we can do better, what we need to do, what we need to change, things like that. So how we could optimize things like that. So, one of them, like, brought it up, and we, like, I was like, oh, let me see, let's try to work with this idea. And then we really collaborated, and we figured out a way to make it successful. And for us, it was like, all right, cool. Like, if you want to put hero bans in the game, like, you ban X heroes, that pushes the comp into one of two styles. We see what the teams play, and then we go for it. And if we think we could play a comp that is the best for us, like, we ended up doing a lot with, like, the Ash Tracer, because we realized nobody could compete with our DPS players. Then, hey, listen, if you guys want to be stressing out and practicing for 6-8 hours a day in scrims and trying to figure out the most optimal comp and playing the comp the perfect way, well, we're just gonna focus on having good fundamentals, understand the game at a high level, and then if we need to make swaps, understand that at a high level, and then that should be good. And I think it worked out well for us. So
you're saying at the pro level, you just focused on fundamentals, basics, and you didn't sweat the tiny details at the. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, I mean, there were some cases that we really needed to focus on little things, and players had one-on-ones and player development and things like that. But we didn't even do a lot of review last year, to be honest. We were very much, we would scrim. We usually would do, like, a little bit of review in the morning. We'd scrim. We may do, like, a review in between the blocks. We may give people a break, depending on how people were, like, emotionally feeling towards the end of the year. And then maybe we do one at the end of the day. And then if we had matches coming up, we'd do, like, a longer review or anything like that. But we weren't doing anything near what we were doing in season 2 or at the beginning of season 3. Like, beginning of season 3, we're like, 6 hours of practice, like 3+ hours of review. When they announced the hero bands and we went to that style, we said, listen, if all these teams are like, because I guess the way, if you think about it, is if all of these teams are ended up like they're competing to try to find what the most optimal comp is and how that's played, and you find a comp that works in that meta and you have success against good teams with early, and all year you've been preaching to have great fundamentals, then you end up coming into a situation of they're going to be struggling to, if they're trying to add the strategy portion on top of their already shaky fundamentals from trying to figure out a comp for 4 days in a 5-day week before a match, then they're trying to add the strategy on top of that. It's that less is more. Everything was more focused. It was just about being good team players, communicating well, playing with each other's abilities well, and just the important things.
Right.
I mean, every week it'd probably be 2 to 3 different key points with comps that, you know, they may be played differently or may need to do things differently. But I mean, majority of the time it's just holding people accountable and making sure that we were always practicing perfect fundamentals.
Makes
If
sense.
we did that, then we'd find success. And I mean, we had a pretty good year last year for being a team that everybody ranked like 19th or 20th.
True. And I think like what you said is really important about the fundamentals and all that stuff. And you've got teams that are, hey, that we figured out the comp that's quote unquote optimal 2 days before our official. Like we're going to be dog at it in 48 hours. There's no way we're going to execute on this properly. And meanwhile, once we get there, we're still going to be thinking about like a ton of tiny little micro details that we obsessed over and like with the proper way to rotate with this composition, instead of just, hey, like you said, we're playing an archetype of spam brawl dive. These are the fundamentals. We'll sort out the details in a one-on-one review, like, and we'll figure it out as we go. And we don't really care. Like, it might not be the optimal comp for this week, but nobody's going to be playing the optimal comp optimally anyway. So it doesn't really matter. It's more important to focus on the big picture stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, especially when we got like later in the year, we got like really fortunate that it was like Tracer just never got banned, because we're like, dude, we're always like, yo, if a hit scan gets banned, like, yeah, it kind of sucks, but like, all right, well, KSP can play Widow, he can play Ashe, he can play McCree, he can play whatever. I mean, he's gonna shoot people in the head and they're gonna die.
Right.
But we didn't really have like an insane Genji player last year. We really didn't have an Echo player. I mean, I think we played KSP on Echo last year against Boston because we were like, well, shit, like we need somebody to play it. Like, but we were very fortunate. I think we got a lot of wins because the hero bands lined up with us really well, and we were able to enable those DPS players. Like when everybody makes the jokes that it was like no KSP, no win. There were a couple weeks there that we were like legitimately like no KSP, no win. Like he was on such a fucking different level last year that like we're sitting in a match and it's like, yo, Kai may kill 6 or we may lose the game. Like, all right, let's see what happens. Because like there were some days that, like, some weeks even, especially with COVID, that I mean, we just had like such shitty practice, and it felt like everybody like just hated each other and didn't want to be there. And then KSP would come up and you just step up in the match and kill everybody, and everybody be happy again. It was like, all right, man, like
that's a way to 180.
You know,
Holy
it's
smokes.
it's one of those things. I guess the winning changes all, but KSP's is he was a big portion of that last year.
Well, so that's good. Do you have like, because we talked like you know the hammering the fundamentals and hero bands, and but then going back to 2019, you've got goals for different scrims and different things there. Like, what is your strategy for keeping track of all that? Because you've got, you know, your one-on-ones, you've got individual team scrim goals. Is that something that you even try to track, or is it just more of a flowing, this is what we're doing today, we're going to do this next week, we're going to do this tomorrow, we're just going to see how things go?
There's a lot of it is really based off of what we see in that day, with what we think we need to improve upon or whatever the case may be. It was easier when there wasn't hero bands, because we're able to just say, okay, cool, like, you know, for a long time it's just going to be goats, and you know we could focus on doing X, Y, and Z, and you know all these kind of things. And like I already had a system designed to teach goats from when I taught Angry Titans how I thought it should be played, and it worked really well. So we kind of were able to just do that in season 2 and implement that from there, and just expand upon it. In season 3, it was a lot different, just because initially it was like you could play anything, and then they started with the hero bands and you know all this kind of stuff. With me, I'm very much an enabler for, as a head coach. That's something I think I'm very good at, and I take a lot of pride in, is putting people in their best roles in the staff and making sure that the people who are in the staff I trust enough to do their work and to be, committed to
Right.
what we want to do in the overall vision. So a lot of the times, we would have like our one-on-one tracker, and we'd have, the coaches would have to just, talk with what the player they were talking to, or what group of players. That's a big thing we did, was like position reviews instead of one-on-ones, because again, if you're watching Shax's POV and you have 4 DPS players in there, all of which play Tracer, maybe they're going to see something. Maybe they're going to ask a different question, all these kind of things. So we ended up kind of shifting over towards that, more of the position player stuff, or position groups rather than individual reviews. But it would be like, hey, listen, what players did you talk to? Like, what did you focus on? Things like that. We had a spreadsheet for that. We had documents that, the coaches would have to fill out in season 2 and then early in season 3, and that kind of went away when COVID started coming up, and ended up just being like 2 coaches anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I'm a very big. I really think in Overwatch, an Overwatch League, and I hope Overwatch League gets to a point that it's successful enough again to, not pay players dog and then actually have a full coaching staff, because I think this game functions so much like a traditional sport that you need, if you want to see and you want to be the best team, you need that like depth in your coaching staff, and you need a lot of good coaches. And in season 2, it ended up, it was, when Moon got fired, it was myself, Dongsu, and Stoop. And then Dongsu kind of checked out because he was really good friends with Moon, and Moon brought him in, and he was a really big role model to him. And Dongsu didn't really respect me because I was a nobody and he didn't know who I was. And Dongsu and I are still great friends, but it just didn't end up working in a professional environment. But he ended up leaving, and it was just myself and Stoop for a little bit. And then we ended up bringing in, like, all the time, it was just both of us, like, busting our ass every day after practice, 6-8 hours after practice, figuring out what we were doing. And then eventually we got to the place where we had Promise, Reprise, and Stoop, and that was a lot easier for me because I was able to just actually put my vision in place and say, hey, listen, guys, like, I trust you guys. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. This is what I need from you guys to make sure that I know what you're doing, and we're like, I'm going to be bouncing around between your different one-on-ones or whatever, but I need you guys to track it in this way. And then we had documents for if players were not performing well, or if they were needed to be disciplined, or this or that or whatever. I mean, there was a lot of different stuff that we did to keep things tracked, because at the end of the day, structure is only as good as the people who are behind it and the people who are running it. So you could put an awesome structure in place, but then you could fail miserably very quickly because you don't give yourself the right checks and balances, and you don't give yourself the right assets and tools to make sure that you know what you're doing and you can keep up with it, and you can keep track of not only individual player growth, but for my job as a head coach, I need to make sure my coaches are also growing and developing, and they're always being challenged, and they're always having those conversations, and they're being able to have the one-on-one conversations with me about what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, how they can develop things like that. And I think that's something that really stood apart from our organization to other organizations, because a lot of the times it's either I hear like the head coach of the team really doesn't do anything, or like one out of like the 4 or 5 coaches on the team is doing everything, everybody else is just kind of slacking off. That's never what we do. We always made sure that everybody was being accountable, everybody was being held accountable. We had systems in place and checks like for everything. So
a consistent theme I'm hearing from you is that, like, you establish a base structure, and then you let the details figured out by the people actually or operating in that role. There's accountability for actually doing it, but you don't, you let your strat coach do his strat coach. You let your one-on-one coach do the one-on-one stuff. But obviously you have to find people there that you can trust to actually really apply themselves there and not just coast.
I find myself, like I said, I think I am, I like to think of myself as a good head coach. And I like to think that, I'm able to establish a vision and see how I want that vision to be put in place and get the right people in there. I've never been, I guess in GOATs, I was, strategically very strong.
You're from Europe, of course.
Yeah. And then, but like, the thing is, I need to be very self-aware, right? And I would be doing my team a disservice if I wasn't being realistic with what my strengths and weaknesses are. And a person like Gunba or a person like Stoop, when we talk about the game, like we may all have different ideas, we all may have good ideas, but people like Gumba, people like Unter, they have these ideas that they're just better.
Yeah, Gunbo's a
They
wizard.
under he is. I mean, he actually just shaved his head and his beard, so he's not really a wizard anymore. But he is the most intelligent person I've ever met in my entire life. So why would I be selfish and say, no, 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 no. What you're saying, I hear you, but we're going to do things my way on
Yep.
this, when I could just trust this man to
Hmm.
do his job, the thing
Yep.
that he's paid to do, and say,
Yep.
hey, listen, I think we could alter it a little bit this way. Could we change things a little bit like this? Like,
Yep.
I don't really understand what's going on here. Let me challenge this idea and
Yep.
see if we can make it even better. Things like that. Like, that's
Yep.
my like I said, your job as a head coach is to enable everyone that you have.
Right.
In professional sports, baseball, football, basketball, especially football. The head coach, they do not, 99 out of 100 times, that head coach will not design the offensive or defensive or special teams game plan for the game they're playing,
Mhm.
because they're too busy dealing with other bullshit and making sure that the overarching vision of that team is coming together.
Right.
They're making sure that the roster is where it needs to be, things like that. It's the same way in games like Overwatch that have 8-10 players on a team, multiple coaches. You need to get your scouting in, your strategy, and your one-on-ones and player development in. You need to make sure that all of those, they're all ticking the right box and making sure that they're in the right place and people are doing their job. Um, it, it requires a lot of time and a lot of effort, and being able to have people that you trust in those roles
Yep.
just makes it that much easier.
Yeah. Do you think that that kind of mentality to structure also like kind of bleeds over into in-game communication? Because I know some coaches that will literally write a thesis on exactly how between fight and mid-fight comms should go, target focus, ult tracking, planning, and this and that. And then I see some teams that legitimately they just they like whatever, if it happens, if it happens. Like what are your like how does this structure apply to that?
Yeah, I think there was an old saying in the Marine Corps. It was simple as smooth, smooth as sexy, and
Yeah.
we
That's straight from Bruce Lee.
yeah. The first time I ever heard that was in the Marine Corps, so I guess that's where I figured it came from. But it's funny because it was actually in Marine Corps martial arts program that they were talking about that, so it
Great.
makes
There
sense
you go.
now.
There you
But
go.
we want things to be as simple and least amount of thinking as possible in the game,
Mhm.
because if you're focusing on your mechanics, you're not focusing on thinking.
Yep.
It makes things easier. We have our general list of call outs that it'll be freaking break down the map, be like, all right, cool. Like, it used to be, I think McGravy used to post it the other day, that it used to be like everything, like window, this, every little aspect of the map, and now it's just like top clock, lower clock,
Yeah.
top this, bottom this, like
Yeah.
whatever. Like, we wanted everything to be as simple and as smooth as possible. So we end up like just using keywords for things. Like, we have a list of like 10 keywords,
Mhm.
and everybody needs to know, and when that word is said, they need to have an immediate response. And if some, for example, if something as stupid as turn,
Mhm.
if you're in our system and someone says turn, you better be fucking turning, because that means that like someone is on the back line on the supports and they need fucking help.
Right.
And it takes a little bit of time for everything to get really into the place where it needed to be, but there was a lot of stuff like that you could just make these keywords that,
Right.
and it's something that we've been doing since I've been doing since 2016, 2017. That it just, you make one word mean fucking 10 things, and everybody understands it, especially in these mixed communication rosters of, we really didn't have like a true translator until we got Lucianal. And then Lucianal was like a full-time student and trying to translate, and he like wasn't there for scrims, but he'd be there for reviews. So like being able to have these like these keywords and being able for everybody to understand what they meant, made number one, a quicker response in the brain, which means quicker action in the game.
Right.
And then number two, it makes things a lot easier when you're just trying to have better team play together. And I think that's one of the things we were very strong with for a majority of the year, was just solid fundamentals and solid team play. And
Yeah.
that all stems from a good communication structure. But that structure, I've learned throughout the years, the more intense, the more in depth that structure and communication is,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times the more difficult it is to execute. And if your players are thinking about if they're doing the right thing and saying the right thing, or they didn't use the proper call out, and then someone's pissed because they didn't call it the freaking heaven window instead of instead of top clock or whatever. I mean,
Yep.
or like mega or whatever. I mean, it just there's so many things that go into it with why things go wrong, and not having a strong communication structure is definitely one of them. And in this game, the game's so fast paced
Mm-hmm.
that having that uh, good communication structure and something that's simple but impactful is really important.
Right.
So
So good structure, hammer fundamentals, like still keep everything simple, as like streamlined as you can. You have a lot of like very, very strong belief systems, I guess, when it comes to like how Overwatch should be done and run. And I think a lot of it, and really all of it, does make sense. But my question is that have you made? Is there any point in time where you had this idea or a concept, or you made this decision and it just turned out terribly? It was just a complete mistake. And that you took away. What did you have any of those, or was it just smooth sailing all the way through?
I think I've never really had anything that I think was just like a fucking disaster. But I mean, there's definitely stuff that you learn through the like you
Right.
learn along the way. I mean, um, I'm trying to think of anything off the top of my head that like really stands out, but I know there have been countless cases that it's just like you do it once and you're like, well, I'm fucking never doing that again. Like, all right, well, because especially like I said in the system in that 2019, season 2 Valiant, that we like I said, we're trying to make it like really like high intensity, different shit every single day, and it was like we were trying to come up with every night with new ideas, new different practice techniques, different things. And I'm sure I mean, I'm sure if you talk to some of the players from that year, they'd be like, dude, we did this thing and it was dumb as fuck. And it was like, I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's definitely stuff. I remember
Sure.
the one time, which it was something that we continuously did because it actually was very impactful, was we did like the simulated matches, right?
Yeah.
And the first day we were doing them, I was talking to my boss. I'm like, listen, Blizzard Arena is cold as shit. Like, we need to get every fucking air conditioner in the player practice area. We need to make it freezing cold. This, that, everything else. The players coming in their jerseys. They're sitting down. Like, we have like a warm up scrim, and then we're getting in there, and then we're like, all right, like let's start blasting the AC. We blast the AC. Fucking power goes out in the whole campus. Literally, we put like 5 or 6 air conditioners in there, and it was fucking cold, but there was no fucking power. And then it heats really quickly up in there again because like, we're in like tin cans in the middle of Southern California. I mean, then we're like, all right, cool. Like, we'll just, maybe just one air conditioner in there is good. Like, we'll just turn it on high for the day. It's like,
right.
But I mean, small stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there have definitely been things throughout my career that it's just been massive failures that just like never did again. They probably wiped them out of my mind because I'm like, if you ever have that idea, there's probably a fucking big red X over it saying don't do it somewhere in your folder. So
Yeah, you forget that you even did it because it was so bad.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess like there's a lot of coaches like right now that kind of I'm sure have had those ideas. Like that was something that I tried as well. We used to call them mock officials. Like go into a match, try and treat it like an official match. There's something on the line, and I think there's a lot of coaches that have a lot of ideas, but I think the real interesting thing for me when it comes to coaching, at least in Western right now, is that right now the path to pro for Western coaches doesn't look super great. Like we've seen, I mean, I'm not that I'm a big name, but I've retired. Zenith has retired. Natter, Ilka, Fragon, Wrath, Temporal. A lot of big names in the Western coaching scene have all basically just said, we've given it our shot, didn't work out, moving on. And a lot of these trials, EU and NA teams, a lot of them don't even have coaches. Don't have coaches at all. What do you think about like this is a little bit of a subject shift, I guess, but what do you think about the path to pro for Western coaches right now? Do you think the path is even viable anymore? Because it seems like it's like you're either like being a lot of these mixed rosters, a lot of teams are wanting Korean coaches, and then a lot of guys are just like, well, I can't financially continue to do this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. Like, I mean, that's the only way to really say it. But fact of the matter is, you look at the statistics of the game, and the game is very successful in the Asian market, and it's dog shit in the American market. I mean, you look at the hours viewed, you look at, the streams that are getting watched here versus, Korean streams or Chinese streams, things like that. It's tough to compete with that. And unless Overwatch League finds a way to get the fans back involved and back to care about it again in the Western scene, then I mean, it's not going to be bright for a lot of coaches. I mean, it's not something that you could sit like when I was in 2017 and go, oh man, I really want to be an Overwatch coach, and I'm going to put my effort into this, and if I do it, I can make a 6-figure contract. It's not like that anymore. Like I know head coaches that are like getting paid what I got paid as an assistant. Because that's just where the game's at. And I know John Spector, and I know he's doing his best to try to make the league successful. But I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, does it suck? Last year was really supposed to be like the telling year for Overwatch League, right? I mean, we looked at, like, we had a travel schedule that went from Dallas to LA to China to here to there to everywhere in the world, and we were supposed to play all around the world and supposed to play all these live events, and that's what Overwatch League was banking on. And now they just come out with that announcement that it's like, hey, listen, it's like all going to be online now. So I don't know if that's kind of them waving the flag of defeat and the game is just going to continue and then fizzle out and then die, or maybe there's a rebirth when Overwatch 2 comes out.
Maybe, yeah.
But I would say, to people who are aspiring coaches, that especially in esports, good coaching translates over any game, and it may not seem that way, or there may be different boundaries to go into different games or whatever the case may be. But regardless of what game I coached, if it was Overwatch, if it's Valorant, if it was League of Legends, I know that I have a skill set to be a top coach at whatever game I coach. And I think it's hard to realize that as someone who is aspiring to do it, because like you said, it's like you spend your time doing it, and like you kind of never get to that level, and you never get paid and all these things, and it's like, I don't know if I could financially support it or do this or whatever the case is. There's so many different boundaries for different people. But if you think you have those abilities and you really think you have that skill, and you want to be involved in esports, Overwatch isn't the only game, and it's by far not the most successful game right now. So, I would say use those good coaching fundamentals, learn other games, learn other skills, and then, bring those skills to the table for organizations. I mean, you look at what T1 is doing with their Valorant roster. They signed like a sports psychologist as their head coach, and then they just signed, they signed Spider, and they signed Ans, like another Korean player, to their team. Our team just imported over 2 Overwatch coaches and said, hey, listen, like, we know they're good coaches, like, they'll be fine. Some teams don't have coaches in Valorant. Some teams have Counter-Strike coaches. The same can be said for, different games. It's if you want to be successful and you love a game, then put that effort in. But, personally right now, if it were my decision, as someone who was going up through the coaching ranks, Overwatch League would not be my goal, because there's not enough money in it. The hours are very long. There's not enough money in it. The season sucks. Like, it's tough. And what's going to happen in the next, even short term, next 1 to 5 years.
Right.
Game may still be here. Overwatch 2 may revitalize it, or it may be dead. Who knows?
Yeah.
It'll definitely be here in the Asian market, that's for sure. But in the North American market, it is not good. And as a Western coach, your opportunity is just going to keep diminishing and diminishing. Right. And you find people, even like Arrow, who got done with the Dallas Fuel, he got fired from there, and then, like, I feel like a year ago, he would have instantly found another job. Not only just because of his brand, but he would have had those opportunities to talk to people and say, hey, listen, this is where I went wrong here. This is what I'm going to do better. And like, this is I'm going to be a good coach here. I feel like he would have had that opportunity. And like, now it's like, I mean, sometimes if you have a bigger brand, or if you were a good coach, you don't even get those opportunities because people don't want to pay you. Right. So, so it's just tough. It's a tough environment all around right now. The market's really shit. And I hope it gets better because like I said, I love the game, but
Yeah.
I don't really want to wake up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning every day to watch the APAC Overwatch League. I would like to be able to watch some Overwatch League with the North American um, uh, or Overwatch League with some Western talent, some Korean talent,
Right.
some people from all over the place. I want it to be like a melting pot
Right.
of talent in NA, but it doesn't seem like that's the way it's going. And the more and more it continues to be uh, successful in the Asian markets and not successful in North America, the more North American orgs, or Western orgs, I should say, are going to continue to back out and
Right.
try to sell their product to the Asian market, which
Right.
sucks if you're a Western coach. So
For sure. You've got a couple buddies still in coaching. You've got
Mhm.
Hunters still coaching, Fact Fiction still coaching. So forget Overwatch League. There's a lot of
Yeah.
other coaches along with those guys. What should coaches in that position, in tier two, whatever, what should they be looking to work on? Now, this is a really broad question. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, but is there like, if we're looking to improve my capability as a coach in that scene, what do you think that like what skills are going to carry over, whether it's Overwatch League or not?
Yeah, I think obviously your communication with the players and how you can motivate them to be successful is it's a major task no matter where you're at. Being able to I think regardless of it's if you're strategically strong at Counter Strike or Overwatch or Valorant or whatever the game is, always be studying studying the strategic aspect of whatever game you're on, or it's important, even if you're studying the strategic aspect of Overwatch and you're eventually you're playing a transition to Valorant. It uses a different process in your brain
Yeah.
and forces you to think a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to continuously challenge yourself is really important. So I think kind of focusing on on those two aspects, and then really focusing on the per your role on your team, like those leadership aspects. Like, how would you structure, if you're an assistant coach, how would you structure this team differently if you were a head coach? Do you think there should be, do you think there should be more practice? Do you think you should have more review? Do you think you should be using different styles or different concepts, or be using different players different ways? Going through and doing these thought process, or thought analysis processes, like, once a day, maybe every other day if you don't really have a ton of time, but um, always doing that kind of like a kind of analysis and self-analysis as to what you would do better if you had the opportunity to do it.
So you talk
Um,
about time.
mhm.
um like we talked about a lot of work, like we both know, like we both follow sports a lot of sports coaching, and like the amount of
Yeah.
time that's put in by some of the coaches, not every coach, not even at the top level. Some coaches have more reasonable hours, but we've all heard of the 14-hour days, 7 days a week kind of a coach, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of Overwatch League coaches and even contenders coaches who put in similar hours. um do you think that's sustainable? Like, and here's the reason I asked that, because obviously people do it and have done
Yeah.
it for years in other sports. But my one question is, because I've noticed that the difference between esports and physical sports is the obviously the level of activity. Um, and obviously the health ramifications of being lethargic in that regard for that long of time. Like, how did that impact you, and what is your opinion on that whole effect, I guess?
Yeah. I think in terms of just in general, the physical impact of coaching a traditional sport versus coaching an esport. Majority of the time, if you're a manager for a baseball team, if you're a head coach for a football team, you get about the same level of activity that you do if you are an esports coach. What a lot of these guys do, what what I do, I mean, what Gumba does, and anybody who works a lot of time. I mean, you could have an exercise bike with you. You could have a treadmill. Watch, I mean, I have in my office, I have a TV right here, so I could just put VODs up on there, and just even stand there and watch the VOD if I want, if I don't want to be sitting down. Gumba has his exercise bike right, facing his TV, so he could watch, the VODs if he wants to, or whatever the case may be. I think being creative about it and being like, hey, listen, like, if I'm gonna put this effort in to be the best coach that I could be smart about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, even now, as going over to like the Valorant scene and things like that, our team practices probably 60% more than any other team in North America. And we do more reviews, and we have longer days, and we do one-on-ones with players, and we do everything. And then when those days are done, Gumba and I will sit down for 3, 4, 5, 6 extra hours. We'll talk about things, try to optimize. Days off are like optimization days that we figure out what we're doing wrong and how we can improve. They look at the statistics of what was going on throughout the week and player deficiencies, things like that. I mean, I have always been a person that's like hard work is the most important thing in the world. When I was when I took over the head coaching job for Valiant, I was the head coach for Valiant. I was going to flight school and flying 5 days a week at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was a brand new father. I was taking 18 credits at university. And I was living in a town that it was, just me, my wife, and my kid. So we had no support structure. And I'd fly out to LA and I would, do all this stuff and turned around Valiant, graduated with my degree, got my pilot's licenses, all this kind of stuff. And I still had that kind of cerebral work ethic when it came to coaching.
Did you write a symphony?
No, I wish I did. I wish I was good with music.
I was going to be impressed, but I'm not
yeah.
quite. Okay.
I wish I was good with music. I mean, I wish I was a good singer, but you don't want to hear that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think people in esports, and I mean, I saw a lot of people in the Overwatch League and stuff. They were like, "Oh man, we work so hard and this, and we're like, we can't win, and like it just we have to work 18 hours a day to be relevant." And I sit there and I go, "Okay, well, number one, I know you're not working 18 hours a day because like some of the people who say that stuff, they're very like I don't know what the right word is, but
attention seeking.
I don't even think it's attention seeking. It's just that like they think they do more than they do.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of the times, like we'll work really hard, but you'll have an hour that you're talking about some bullshit rather than talking about coaching stuff.
Yeah.
That's not work. Yeah. Like if you really want to, compact what you're doing, then you'll compact what you're doing and you'll make it like more efficient. Yeah. Needless to say, it's really hard to do that, but you look at these professional sports coaches, and those coaches are legitimately coaching 14 to 16 hours a day.
Right.
Between their practice, their meetings, their meetings with the GM, planning their flight itinerary and the bus itinerary for their flights, all these different things. They have so much more to do than the common person. And that's why when I ended up last year taking over GM and head coach responsibilities of both Valiant and Valorant, people were like, "Oh my God, how does he have the time to do it?" Well, both Valiant finished really high in NA, and then our Valorant team never had lower than an 8th place finish in any tournament. So, being a hard worker and understanding how to manage that time and compress that time, that's what's the really important thing. Like if you're working 12 hours a day and you're getting everything out of that 12 hours a day, that's better than saying you're working 16 hours a day and then, playing WoW for 4 hours, like shooting the shit about the game. But that's what a lot of people do. And a lot of people think that is work. And I think that's where a lot of that misconception comes. And that's why, like I said, I mean, almost every single interview I've ever done, people are like, "How in the world were you able to do X, Y, Z and still be successful?" And I'm like, I managed my time. Literally, I would have my time scheduled out to the 5 minutes increments when I was in flight school. I'd literally be like, "All right, cool. I'm fucking flying from South Georgia to Panama City and back. I'll be back at this time. There's a time zone change. When I'm there, I'll do this. I'll give this person a call. I'm going to come back. I'll hit this one class, go pick up my kid, do our review. Then I'm going to go back and do this, like go do another class." I mean, if you want to make it work, you'll make it work. If you want to be good at what you do, you'll be good at what you do. But it just requires that kind of cerebral, work ethic and tenacity when you're trying to be good, because some people say they want to be a good coach, but they don't really mean it. And you may say it and you may believe you mean it.
Yep.
But you deep down, that's really not what you want to do. Like me, I'll tell you right now, what I want to do in my life is I want to coach a professional sports team. I don't want to be in esports. I want to coach, a professional baseball team or a basketball team or a football team. Those are the 3 things I've wanted to do that since I was a kid. And I still want to do it. And every day when I show up to work in esports, I make sure that I'm treating it as if I'm pursuing that job. And, one day maybe down the road I'll be able to take that risk and, try to do that. But, you know, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I feel like every single day, if I don't give every single bit of effort I have, it's a missed opportunity. And a lot of people, like I said, they think they mean it and they think they want to do something, but at the end of the day, they won't sacrifice everything for that. And
Right. Right.
that's the difference.
I think some of it is just like understanding what you want entails, knowing how
For
much
sure.
work it
Yeah.
takes in.
Yeah.
So we talked about like a lot of coaches kind of stepping down and moving on. So that we've seen a rise in player-led teams because a lot of players have moved on as well, but there's always going to be players to fill that gap. Like it just seems like that's always been the case and always will be.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of player-led teams, a lot in North America and Europe. So I've got kind of two questions in one here. First off, what are your thoughts on player-led teams? And then second off, if you're a player in a player-led team, do you have any advice for like not having that leadership there?
Yeah. I mean, player-led teams can be successful. I mean, it's one of those the conversations of going back to the talent comes before all kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I remember in season 2, anytime, dude, we got our ass beat by Atlanta Academy more than any fucking team in Overwatch League. Like we
Yeah.
would do better against Shock than we were doing
Yeah.
against Atlanta Academy.
Very much
I
a
mean,
player-led team too.
yeah, very, very much player-led team. I mean, like they're like if they were doing like I mean, with our teams, if we're trolling or doing this or doing that, I mean, there's repercussions. I might get mad or this or that or what we might do a review or something. And that team, they're like, yo, let's troll and fucking camp these guys. I remember a game against Atlanta Academy in scrims that they fucking camped us at Dorado doors and we pushed the cart like 0.03 meters. And it was just like, what feedback do you give people? It's like, well, dude, we just fucking suck, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. These 14-year-old cracked out gamers just dominated a professional team that was on like a 10-game win streak. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
So the fact of like being a player-led team, I think a lot of the times player-led teams are successful because those players aren't afraid of being confrontational with each other and being like, hey, if things are going great, they're like troll and have fun and all that stuff, and they like being around each other. But if someone's being dumb, or not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or if they're trying to take things seriously or whatever, or they think someone's playing like dog shit, they're okay to call them out and be like, dude, you're dog shit. Like, why are you such a dog shit player?
Yeah.
I've heard that plenty of times with these teams that are more player led teams. And when teams end up doing that and they come into that, I don't want to say kind of like combative stage, but they have a very very open feedback with each other,
Yeah.
regardless of if it's really negative or really positive or whatever. You can see a lot of growth and you find out unique things. And a lot of those teams that are player led, they end up having the potential to be more creative than teams that are more structured because they're not afraid to take risks. And if you're ever afraid to take risks, then you're not going to try to do something unique or try something because you're afraid to get yelled at or whatever. And then so on and so forth, go down the chain, and then you don't take that risk. But in those player led teams, they don't care. They're like, dude, all right, hey, listen, I'm gonna go into their back line as Doomfist. See you later. Oh, well, I killed 3. Dude, I did this crazy freaking wall boost over here, and this, that, everything else, and I'm gonna try that again next scrim. Like stuff like that happens, and it is really conducive to growth. But there's also a lot of negatives that come with that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're a player in a player-led team, making sure that you guys are always giving feedback, you're doing reviews with each other, like just in general, and just talking about the problems. Those are the big things that you can do. I mean, you're not gonna have someone sitting there and be like, all right, guys, we're gonna do a review from this time to this time. We're gonna be everything's gonna be structured out for you, and this, that, everything else. But you can do a little bit of that yourself and be like, yo, guys, like after scrims, like let's just review this. Like this went really shitty. Like we lost this scrim. Why did we lose? Let's go find out.
Sure.
Take 15 minutes and figure it out, and you'll go from there. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I think American Tornado, is that the team that won last year? I think that's it was a very player run team, right? And I mean, they just have fucking crazy cracked out gamers, and I mean, they were nuts. Like they were really good. So
so you talked about how like you're a big fan of like talent, scout talent, get talent. Is there anything else that separates an aspiring pro player from, I guess, the rest of the pack, besides just simply wanting it more? Is there anything personality wise or attitude wise or anything else that like really separates things for you? Because I want to, if you're a tier 2, tier 3 player out there, like what besides just getting good, right, and being cracked out of your mind, is there anything else that you like stands out or stood out to you in the past?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a case by case thing. I think what you think the team needs, but I was a couple years ago. I was always like, we need to find the perfect fits for everything. We need to find the players that's going to be compatible with these guys to be a good leader and do this and do that. But like I said, when we kind of shifted away from that and we had to do the tryouts for season 3 Overwatch League, and we are like, listen, let's just objectively pick the players that we just think have the best talent. And then we just pick those players, and we're like, these are the players that we could get with our budget and this talent, and let's just see what happens. When we did that, and then we're like, okay, cool. Like every team's gonna have problems, regardless of if there's everybody's super nice or super mean or whatever. And when we shifted that focus to like just getting talent, that's kind of when things really I opened my eyes to that it's like you can coach people to be better people to each other, better teammates, but you can't coach people to be better at shooting the other guy in the head. And that's really what we look for. If you have the mechanical ability, I mean, like I said, same thing happened in Valorant. We did open tryouts and we're like, find the best people. We don't even know what the best people look like. We're just like, all right, we have our stats, we have our eyeballs, let's see what the best possible people are. And we just pick players we thought like were just the mechanically best players. Turns out that 2 out of those 5, well, we picked 3 players up then. 2 out of those 3 players are still on our roster right now. Another one we picked up, it was 6 months. He's still here because they had that talent, and they may have had other bumps and bruises along the way, and things they need to work on. They may still have stuff that they need to work on, but realistically, if you can compete and you can perform in matches and you have that mechanical ability, we'll help you with the other stuff, and we'll get you there.
So you got to be pretty confident in your ability to create a structure around that, and like to get players to step up. Yeah. Of course. So like you're drafting surely on one aspect of the talent, the clicking heads, the mechanics, because you're like, hey, listen, the communication, the leadership, the synergy, I will handle that. We will make that happen. Like that's very interesting to me. Okay, I don't have a whole lot else, but I did want to finish off with like, how's Valorant treating you? How is that transition going from Overwatch to Valorant? Like, what are the similarities? Like, or just like fill us in, because like, I think since you step out of the scene, there's just been like this void. Like nobody knows what everybody's favorite NA coach is doing, and so now it's like everyone's just sad and depressed. And so like, what's the deal? Like, how is it treating you?
First off, I genuinely do miss Overwatch. Someone asked me the other day, like, if I had the opportunity, would I, go back to Overwatch or whatever the case may be? And I was like, well, maybe if like, the financials in Overwatch got better, because I love Overwatch, but at the end of the day, like I'm also supporting family. So, that's a little bit tough. But if those opportunities ever came, I would actually be, open to the idea of going back to Overwatch. I just don't know if that's long-term in the cards. So, speaking on Valorant, it's kind of been like a little bit of a dream. It's been being able to do what we did well initially, and make a team that like we're like, hey, listen, we're gonna run open tryouts, and people like made fun of us when we were doing it. And they're like, oh my god, Immortals is doing open tryouts. Like no way that's gonna work. Like they're not importing CS talent. And we like signed a bunch of players who like weren't CS players or like weren't successful CS players. And we're like, listen, this is the vision we have for the game, and like we want to try to go with it. And kudos to Immortals for trusting us, and saying, hey, listen, like we're gonna let you guys do this. But the fact that we learned a lot about ourselves over the past year, going into an environment we were very uncomfortable in initially, that we didn't really have the scope and the assets that we needed to be successful, or at least what many people would say that we needed to be successful. But what we had was, the teamwork that myself and Gumba have with each other, and the ability of being very self-critical and objective about talent scouting, and that we're extremely hardworking, and we thought that we could make it work. And
Sure. Can
um,
I interrupt real quick? Aren't open trials how you found Lastro and Dreamer as well, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, so Lastro, I actually had Lastro on a short list in 2019, as someone like if we, because I wanted to keep Kariv, and if I kept Kariv, I wanted to bring Lastro on as a backup, and like
Yep.
kind of have him mentor him a little bit.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, Dreamer, yeah, I mean, pretty much that entire team played through open trial. Dreamer, Rain, everybody pretty much played through that trial. So, yeah, and we had I think we had like 1,500 people that we tried out
Good gosh.
for that one. Yeah. So, the Valorant one was a little bit less. It was a couple hundred, but
Still.
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, especially this one was like only 2 people doing it, so it was a little bit tougher. But yeah, I mean, working in Valorant, it's different because the game's a lot slower, so it's actually a lot more enjoyable to coach because it's like, all right, you got 2 minutes of gameplay, and then you have like 30 seconds, or you could pause the game and then talk about something, and then there you got 2 minutes of gameplay, and then you could talk
Right.
about something again, and it makes it a lot more enjoyable, and a lot more slow paced compared to Overwatch, where it's like, you have a map that may last 12 minutes on one side because they go to overtime on every single point, and then you're trying to like write your notes as it's going on and watch the game and do this, and then like you have like 30 seconds to talk, and you're like, all right guys, well, like we need to improve at X, Y, and Z, and like actually we need to be playing this comp, and McGravy, go back to spawn and pick Sigma because you need to play like this, and all right Dreamer, you have to play over here, and we're gonna use Winston jump like this, like and then it's like the next thing you know, the round starts. In Valorant, it's not like that. It's a lot more, it's a lot more chill because the time constraints are just different. If you're like, hey, listen, I got something big I want to talk about, round ends, you're like, yo, guys, pause. All right, let's talk about this. You can pull up your map. You could do this. You could pull up a Discord stream, talk for 2-3 minutes. All right, guys, cool. Freaking boom, back to the scrim. Yeah, I mean, it's a great game. I'm very pleased to kind of see where the game is going. I mean, it looks like it's going to more of an ability-based game in general with the heroes they've been releasing. So I think that kind of pushes out a little bit of like the CS old guard that was kind of like gatekeeping a lot of the people in like tier 2 and things like that. But we just wanted to be on the forefront of being the team that said it doesn't matter where you're from, or if you came from Counter-Strike or Overwatch or Fortnite, or JC Stanley came from Crunker, he's our best Crunker player in the world or some shit like that. We don't care where you're from. If you can play the game, we want to make you a Valorant player. And like, it's like now at the point that we've had some of these guys for like 6 months to a year, that it's like, yeah, like these guys are legitimate Valorant players. They're not, Counter-Strike players. They're ideas. You bring in some of these guys who are like MDL CS players or around there, and they, when they started playing the game, they're like, well, why are we not doing this? And like, we don't have like the set execute for the site, and blah 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 blah. And like, this is the way we need to go on the server and figure this out. And we're like, dude, just trust us. Like, it'll make sense over time. And now they're like, dude, look at these guys. These dumbasses are going into the server and doing this and wasting their time because when we could just do X and counter it. Like, we counter it with one ability. And it's like, being able to see kind of like that progression and growth has been very rewarding and very self-fulfilling. But obviously we kind of had an early exit here at Masters recently. We came in first in one of the tournaments, second and third, and then we just we kind of shit the bed and came in eighth in this Masters event that we were really much looking forward to. But it was a good learning experience because we do have a lot of two like inexperienced players, and they need some time to grow and develop as well. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But I mean, it's been great, and I would recommend, like, if you're a good coach and you want to make a name for yourself in a game that's still relatively new, that the metrics have been really good for, and salaries are good for, and all these things, like, I mean, Valorant's the way to go. Like, it is definitely something that seems like it is going to be successful for a pretty long time. So
awesome. Well, thank you, first off, so much for your time. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure thank you from all the people who you've inspired and educated, not just the players, but obviously you've been a lot more open than really any coach in the Overwatch League with your ideas and your concepts. And that's helped and inspired a lot of people. So appreciate that, and ultimately good luck in Valorant, and ultimately good luck in your pursuit of pro sports outside of esports. Like,
Thanks.
hopefully,
Yeah.
like
Maybe
was it
one day,
football?
dude.
Football? Is that what? Is that what?
I mean, if I got to choose, it would be baseball. If I got to choose,
Really?
but
Why
yeah,
baseball?
I mean, growing up, I always when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a major league baseball player. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted to be.
Uh-huh.
Turns out, when you have a stroke at 15 and you stop
Oh
growing at
gosh.
like 5'9", your chances of getting a Division I offer go right out the drain. Yeah,
Okay.
when I was going into high school, I had a couple places that were looking at me like high Division II schools, and then once I had a stroke, people are like, "All right, cool, we'll see you later, dude." And ultimately, that's why I joined the Marine
No.
Corps, because I was like,
Oh,
nobody really wanted to
that's
take a chance on
awful.
me. So I was like, if I go through the Marine Corps and I can make it through boot camp and I don't die of a brain aneurysm, then like I'm a normal person, right? And I just went to the Marine Corps, and sure enough, at least I hope I didn't die. Maybe this is all like a fever
Yeah.
dream or something.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say.
you know,
Jeez.
I mean, it's one of those things that uh, I just had a passion for it as a kid. I still have a passion for it.
Sure.
Not that I don't about football or basketball or any of those
Sure.
other sports, but
You got to work on your slack jaw though to argue with the umps if you're gonna do that.
yeah, that's very true, very true.
You
But
gotta
hey,
be.
I'll tell you, I could argue with the best of them. So
Okay, you got good luck getting thrown out. Like I could
yeah,
see it now.
exactly, dude. Yeah,
I could
that'd be
see it.
great, man. You need one early night, you just freaking
Yeah.
start yapping in their ear, call it
Yeah,
a day, freaking go
you're
down
up
to the
6
clubhouse.
runs. Just go. Just like
Yeah, yeah.
like
Hey,
it
I'm
doesn't
gonna
matter
go.
anymore.
Yeah, meet me at the steakhouse, boys. I'll watch the game from there. So,
Well, thank you again, brother. I really
of course,
appreciate your
man.
time. And I guess any last shout outs or call outs or anything that you want to do before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I guess I will have one. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned it before, a couple of the guys that I've worked with in the past, players, coaches, things like that, are still coaching in Overwatch League, and or not in Overwatch League, but in like contenders and trying to get their way back in Overwatch League. So, if there are any Overwatch League teams or people from Overwatch League teams who watch these VODs, sign Unter, because he's gonna make your team better. And I know McGravy and Fact Fiction are coaching as well right now, and fucking
Oh, we
looking to
agree.
those
Very good.
guys. And
Yeah.
yeah, he's coaching
Congrats.
with Hunter. It's like, we need to look out for good people in this in
Yeah.
esports, and if that's you know looking out for KSP and Shax, and like trying to find them homes to play on this year, was something I was able to do with the shitty stuff that happened with the Valiant. But him, Sungwoo, Hunter, Sungwoo,
Yeah.
McGravy, like all these guys, they all deserve great opportunities, and especially Hunter. He turned down. I don't know if people know this, but he actually turned down a head coaching offer to stay and coach under me again this year, and then
Oof.
unfortunately, like the Valiant stuff happened, and then he was out of a job, and now he is just coaching in contenders. But the dude is insane, and
Yeah.
people should someone should pick him up.
I can
So
confirm. I hung out with Max a little bit over in Sydney, and like I don't like he's such a nice guy. Like how's this guy from Australia? Like
yeah,
like,
he's something, man. I'll tell you, he's something. But he's genuinely one of the smartest people I know.
yeah.
And that says a lot, because if I think someone's dog shit, I'll just say you're dog shit. So I really do hope that someone gives him an opportunity, and we could end up
Yeah.
seeing him back in the Overwatch League. So
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you again, brother. Again, I appreciate your time, and
of course, yeah,
good
thanks for
luck.
having me.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, man.